Welcome you all to this listening event. I want to thank Kansas City, Kansas Community College for setting up everything. Wow, this is a great setup, and we really appreciate it. We're going to go next to a prayer and then a pledge of allegiance. So if you'll please rise for a prayer and remain standing for the pledge. Representative Tom Sawyer will start us off with a prayer.
And let's be in an attitude of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless our event tonight. Thankful for the wonderful crowd we have here today. Thank you for the safe passage we've had, good meetings we've had across the state of Kansas. Dear God, please be with our citizens tonight as they speak to us. Give them the strength and courage they need to speak their minds. Please give us the ability to listen closely. Dear God, please help us to drive safely and have safe passage on to Leavenworth on our next trip. Great name we pray. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. Thank you. Okay, I want to thank you all again today for being here. We're excited about this opportunity to hear from you, the public, about your thoughts on your community. This is a listening tour for the committee and the body to hear from you about what is important to you and in your areas and what we should consider as we go through this process. I'd like to take a quick minute to introduce a few of our members, and we'll start off with the Senate. I just wanted to introduce the Senate Chair and the Senate Vice President, Senator Rick Wilburn, and I'll turn it over to him to introduce his team.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Rick Wilburn, Vice President and Chairman of the Senate Redistricting Committee. Also with us today is, behind me is Senate President Ty Masterson, who is the Vice Chair, and to my left is the ranking member of the Redistricting Committee, Senate Minority Leader Diana Sykes.
All right, and I guess I should have introduced myself up front. I'm Representative Chris Croft, and I'm the chair of the House Redistricting Committee. And to my right, and I'm from Overland Park, to my right is the Redistricting Vice Chair, Representative Brad Ralph from Dodge City. And then to his right is Redistricting Ranking Member, Representative Tom Burrows from Kansas City. I'd also like just to take a moment to recognize the Speaker of the House, Representative Ron Reichman Jr., who's walking across now. And House Minority Leader, Representative Tom Sawyer, who led us in the prayer. All right, with that, again, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I want to turn it over to Representative Tom Burrows, who would like to make a welcoming comment to you.
Like many of you, thank you. Like many of you, the committee members want a fair and transparent redistricting process. Our compressed schedule this week is just the beginning of our monumental task. The information and testimony shared here today may very well impact our communities. I strongly suggest to each of you to continue to let your voice be heard. Again, thank you for joining us this evening.
I'm on a WebEx watching a committee.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Representative Burrows. All right, really appreciate those in the audience and the committee members, both here and online, as we could hear, for those participating in the process. This listening tour is for us to hear from the public about your community, and it's just one step in the overall redistricting process. Our goal at the end of this is we're going through this, that we're exceptionally transparent and have access and public access. What you have to say is very important to us. We have asked that the state officials, that are the elected state officials, to provide their comments at a later time to make sure we maximize the time for the public here. We are looking forward to becoming more familiar with your communities and hearing what you have to say on things to consider as we are drawing the boundary lines and how to improve this process as we move forward. There was an online sign-up sheet, and we had one in the back of the room here in the entrance for those wishing to speak. If somebody still wants to sign up, just let me know, or let somebody at the back know, and we do that. If a speaker is more comfortable speaking in another language and it would ensure the speaker's thoughts are more accurately portrayed, we encourage the speaker to use that language. We will have the comments transcribed and translated following today's meeting and provided to the committee members, the body, and the public. We're also having, as you can see, closed captioning here in the room and online. This time around is a little different. Redistricting is a little more challenging with the delay of the U.S. Census data. By conducting these listening tours now, though, it is an opportunity for us to hear from you about your communities, the things that you want us to think about, what's unique, how it's changed in the last 10 years. That's, and think about it as we're drawing the lines, what might we want to be talking about or thinking about as we're going? And it's not the last time we're going to hear from you, but at least something that you can plant in our minds as we're moving now. And we welcome comments again on the overall process. And as I mentioned, this is just one step in the process, and it is a continual and long process. And to address the overall process and where we are in that sequence, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Jordan from the Kansas Legislative Research Department to provide you that overview. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholland, Kansas Legislative Research Department. I'm a senior analyst with KLRD, and I'm our redistricting analyst. This evening, I'd like to provide some information on the census and the redistricting process. I wanted to start off with letting everyone know that this presentation is available online. If you visit the Kansas Legislature website and visit either the page for the House Committee on Redistricting or the Senate Committee on Redistricting, you can access the meeting materials, including this presentation. So to begin with, some part of the census is constantly happening. Redistricting is a part of this cycle. Federal law requires states have the opportunity to participate in census prep, and states are required to participate to get census data for certain areas of the state, or specifically smaller units of geography, such as precincts. The program also requires states to participate through a nonpartisan entity. In Kansas, we participate through the Kansas Legislative Research Department, and we've been working with the census since 2015 in this current cycle. And this current cycle will end in the year 2025. The program is broken into 5 phases. Phase 1 is the Block Boundary Suggestion Project. Phase 2 is the Voting District Project. And in that phase, each county is able to submit updates to some of their lines. And then Phase 3 is the delivery of census data. As was mentioned earlier, we received the legacy format files today. Those files will take some manipulation to get to the data, and it's preliminary data. And then the more user-friendly files will be delivered by September 30th, 2021. Phase 4 is confirmation of the boundaries. This occurs after redistricting. And then Phase 5 is feedback. Next, I'd like to speak about the 2020 apportionment. So on Census Day, it's a snapshot of Kansas at that point in time. We received the total state population for purposes of apportionment. That was determined to be 2,937,880 persons. That's good for a gain of over 84,000 persons. Kansas did not gain or lose a congressional seat in this cycle. Next, I'd like to speak about the adjustment. From 1988 to 2019, the Kansas Constitution and Kansas statute required adjustment for military personnel and college students. In 2019, the legislature passed a Senate concurrent resolution that added language to the November ballot to remove that adjustment, and that language is approved by voters in 2019. Next, I'd like to discuss the redistricting process. It's a legislative process. The bills are drawn on a computer, and then the bills that are submitted to committee are actually turned into bill language, and that language is subject to amendment, subject to committee hearings, just the same as any other bill. and the legislature would approve the maps through those bills. And the legislature approves congressional, Kansas House, Kansas Senate, and Kansas Board of Education districts. Then, just like other bills, the governor will either sign, veto, or allow the bill to become law without signature. And then the Kansas Supreme Court also has a review of those maps. They have to determine the validity of the maps and approve them. The next slide has some more detail on that process. The bills that are approved by the legislature are published in the register upon passage, and then the Attorney General is required to petition the court to determine validity of those maps. If the court says the maps are valid, the process is complete until the next cycle. If the court determines the maps not to be valid, then there's some certain steps that have to occur, but basically the process would repeat until the Supreme Court approves those maps. Next, I'd like to highlight KLRD resources that are available. For every map that is subject to a technical review, there are a number of reports that are generated. This image that you can see on the screen behind you, it's pretty tiny text, but you can see there's quite a list there of different reports that are available. If you're interested in that information, we still have the 2012 information on our website at ksledgeresearch.org, and you can go through and look through those different reports that are generated. Similar reports are run for each proposed plan that's subject to a technical review. Finally, I wanted to highlight ways to contact KLRD if you have questions. We have an office in the State House. You can call our main phone line, which is listed there at 785-296-3181. You can visit kslegislature.org/KLRD, or you can email redistricting staff at redistricting@klrd.ks.gov. Mr. Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate those comments. Before we move on to the next part, I just wanted to highlight we have two sign language interpreters here in the room, Artemis Porch and Kim Bates, and they're located off to my left. So I have a sign language interpreter on the screen. All right, for those of you who sent in public comments as of yesterday, those documents are in the inboxes of each of the committee members and are posted online on the legislative web page for the redistricting committee at ksledgeresearch.org. If anyone wants to provide public comment later, please send comments to redistricting@klrd.ks.gov. Or you can do that on the website as well. The website has instructions, and we just ask that you follow those instructions as you go along. One thing I do want to highlight is I want to highlight the fact that there's no cutoff date for public testimony. So we want, if you think about it at 2 o'clock in the morning and you want to send it in, go for it. Send it in. Send it to that website. Whenever it comes to you, send it in. We want to hear from you because it's very important to us. With that, the House Committee Vice Chair, to my right, Representative Brad Ralph, will maintain a timer that will indicate with a card your time remaining. The Vice Chair will start with 2 minutes. Okay, that's the 2 minutes remaining, and then 1 minute and then 30 seconds. This will give you an opportunity to start thinking about how to wrap up and scale your comments to that point. When your time is expired, he'll hold up a card that says time expired. We ask that you honor that because what we're trying to do is make sure the speakers behind you have time as well. So we've committed the time that we have for all that. So we just ask that you honor that. We are allocating 3 minutes per presenter based off the numbers that have signed up. Again, a brief reminder, we have received several comments on the process. We do appreciate those comments, and we continue to welcome those comments. If you've seen somebody else saying something and you want to highlight something else, then take that opportunity because it's already out there and we already know about it. But we would like to hear from you about your communities, how they've changed over the last 10 years. What are some special considerations and anything you feel that is important for us to be aware of as we go through this process? If you want us to have, and things that you want us to have in our minds as we're redrawing or potentially drawing boundary lines. And as we are planning for future events. It is really important for us to hear from you. So with that, we have our first speaker, and we'll give that to former State Senator Anthony Hensley. Sir.
Two o'clock in the morning, much of anything. I want to say hi to my former Senate colleagues, my former House colleague, Representative Sawyer. I served with Representative Sawyer, we were actually in the majority. He was the majority leader, and I have a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to try to. Got this clicker here that I think I'll be able to change the slides as we go along. I'm going to talk quite a bit about what happened 10 years ago on the congressional redistricting. I'm going to focus on legislative redistricting. We did go to federal court, particularly on the Senate maps 10 years ago. That was because the majority party in the Senate was real fractured. There was a strong difference of opinion as to where the lines were. Of course, the court did finally sign off, or they actually ordered through a court order. So with regard to congressional redistricting, I think the question is, will you adopt fair, bipartisan, and reasonable guidelines, adhere to those guidelines, avoid partisan politics, and put the people of Kansas first? Or will you gerrymander? This is about as egregious a gerrymander as I've ever seen. This is the Illinois District 4 in Chicago. I call it the earmuff district, okay? Because the two earmuffs are Chicago, but it's split right down the middle. And of course, it's represented by a Democrat in Illinois. The origin of the word gerrymander comes from the fact that Governor Gerry of Massachusetts in 1812 signed a bill that gerrymandered basically a state Senate district to appear like a salamander. So consequently, the two words were merged into gerrymander. And the definition of gerrymandering, I'll let you read that yourself. It's up here. It's a term of art with regard to districting. And in history, in deference to the President of the Senate, I'm not going to actually play this video, but I think everybody knows what Senator Wagle said. So my friend Tim Hillscamp contacted me back in 2010, and he said, Representative Jenkins, his colleague in Congress, wants me to take Wyandotte County. So I went back and I had my chief of staff draw a map to see what that would look like, Wyandotte County in the 1st District. It's pretty much a salamander looking type deal. The body of the salamander might be a little thicker. And so this gerrymander plan violated a number of our guidelines. I'll let you read that. It's on the website. But this is an actual map that did pass out of committee that put Wyandotte County in the 1st District. So that was gerrymandering 200 years later. So this time around, we've gained 84,000 people as compared to 10 years ago. And this is the map that actually passed the 2012 session. And I'm going to talk about the advantages of this map. You can see the population deviations were practically at 0. Plus, it did not dilute the minority voting power in Wyandotte County. It put together a community of, or kept together a community of interest of KCK and Johnson County. It also, let me go back to that, it also solidified southeast Kansas. It put Montgomery County for the first time in the southeast Kansas area. And the last thing I'll talk about is there was a bill that created a redistricting commission. You can go back and look at that. My time's up. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you for going around the state. Okay.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Paige Gerson from Heartland Movement.
So I'm here mostly because of
She can't hear you, so I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So my name's Peyton. I live in Overland Park and okay. I'm a lifelong resident of the KC metro area, currently an Overland Park resident. Here because I want nonpartisan redistricting, Wyandotte, Johnson County together on economic and other shared interests and ties. I know that I can't stop your redistricting for reasons other than these, but I can ensure that I see you, history sees you. Fairness is at the heart of the U.S. has the oldest continuous democracy in the world, dating back to 1776. 13 states signed the Declaration of Independence. Since then, for 245 years, every leader has been elected, and there have been no kings, queens, military juntas, or dictatorships. In 1776, only wealthy male property owners could vote. But over the years, our democracy has evolved to allow everyone 18 and older who isn't a convicted felon to do so. Yet now you are trying to manipulate the system to choose your voters, rather than allowing voters to choose their representatives. Power, dominance, a society of homogenous, wealthy Americans, is that what you're striving for? How much more money do each of you need to be happy? Are you afraid of living a life in a diverse country? Unless you are a Native American, you too are in the United States because your ancestors were seeking a better life. We are all immigrants. Isn't a better life what you want for your friends and family too? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker will be Susan Stevens, Social Democrats, USA, Kansas. I want to pick it up and talk into it.
Thank you.
You might have to lean in a little bit.
Won't go up any higher. Like
Yeah.
this? Okay, great. I'm also a resident of Wyandotte County. As the lady before me mentioned, we have a really, kind of a unique district in that, congressional district comprised of Wyandotte and Johnson. We're the most racially diverse district in the state. And one thing I'm learning as I am getting involved with Social Democrats USA and learning about democracy is the importance of distinguishing between the idea that the majority just squashes the minority. You know, we're living in a predominantly white, I think predominantly rural state, and definitely white rural voices need to have a voice here. I'm not talking about urban voices drowning out rural, but also rural shouldn't, or white shouldn't drown out urban and voices, minority voices. And so keeping us together as we have historically been for a really long time as one district, it gives us a voice. If we're fractured up and one part is in different parts are just kind of dropped into a sea of majority rural white, you would basically be out some really unique voices. And again, democracy, it's not about the majority squashing the minority. It's about letting everybody have a voice, allowing the conversations to continue. And conversations can't continue if one part is kept silent. And you guys have a really solemn task, a really holy task of really drawing the lines in order to ensure that democracy happens, that everyone has a voice. And my prayer is that you'll take it seriously. We'll be paying attention to who does and who doesn't take it seriously, not as a threat, but because of our civic duty. And thank you again for listening.
Thank you, Susan. All right, our next speaker will be Leslie Bush from Private Citizen. Did I get your last name correctly?
Bush. I'm a resident of KCK. I bought my house in KCK just a couple of years ago. I love living in KCK. I love it here because of the people that live here. I also recognize that if our government was representative of the state where I live, city I live in, neighborhood I live in, our elected officials would look a lot more like me. When I look at the makeup of who is supposed to represent us, I do not see voices that represent my community. Isn't that what a democracy aspires to be? I'm not naive. I saw Senator Wagle talk about rigging Congresswoman Davids out of the seat she earned. What Wagle and maybe you don't understand about Congresswoman Davids and people like her is what she represents to so many of us. Her campaign and her win was an invitation to people like me, young people, women, queer people, to be a part of changing the world around us. And now that we've been invited to that table, we're not going anywhere. Susan Wagle does not speak for me. Thanks. She doesn't speak for me. She doesn't speak for most of this room. She doesn't speak for Kansans. So I'm speaking for myself. When I look around me, at the state level and the national level, I think our democracy is in shambles. We have rampant voter suppression. We have gerrymandered districts that undermine the lived experience of so many people, but especially of Black and Latinx people, especially here in Wyandotte County. We have politicians who pander to corporations and extremist groups instead of to people like me, people who just want to live in communities that can thrive. So redistricting, it's an opportunity to live our values. These values are not to divide and further disenfranchise voters, especially Black and Latinx voters. But these values, I'd hope, include equity and justice and fairness. Redistricting is an opportunity to ensure that voters in Kansas can see these values in action. We deserve fair maps.
Thank you for your comments. Our next will be Amber Stinger, League of Women Voters of Johnson County.
Evening. Thank you for allowing me and others from the community to speak about the importance of redistricting and elevating the voices of our community. My name is Amber Stinger, and I'm here tonight as president of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County. The League is an organization that for more than 100 years has fought to protect and strengthen our democracy and ensure full participation and access for citizens in the process. The redistricting work that your committees have been charged with is foundational to our democracy and determines whether people have faith in our electoral system and whether their participation actually matters. We are here tonight to ensure that maps drawn in the 2021 redistricting cycle fairly represent our communities and that the redistricting process itself is equitable and transparent. I recognize that the time is limited here tonight, and I know several people in the hearings earlier today and tonight have spoken to these points, but we really can't stress them enough. And maybe the frequency that you're hearing them conveys the importance of these items to your constituents. First, we urge you to consider communities of interest when crafting districts. Johnson and Wyandotte counties are one such community of interest. Our organization, like many other community organizations and businesses, serves residents of both counties. What happens in one county greatly affects the other in myriad ways: environmental impacts, economic development and viability, infrastructure durability, to name just a few. As population centers within the larger Kansas City metro area, we have distinct shared interests that should be taken into account when drawing electoral maps. To make the redistricting process as fair and transparent as possible, we ask that you follow up this listening tour with additional, well-publicized, and widely accessible opportunities for Kansans to participate in this process using the just released census data and prior to the start of the 2022 session. We encourage you to announce opportunities for additional input at least 2 weeks in advance and allow people to submit testimony virtually. With these measures, we may be able to restore the public's faith in our democracy and assure them that their votes do matter. Thank you for your time and attention this evening.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Alan Bauman, private citizen. Alan Bauman here. Okay. Go on to the next. Go on to the next. As Jim Schrader, private citizen. Welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity. As many other people have talked about, it is of utmost importance that Kansas creates at least one of the 4 congressional districts centered around its largest metropolitan area, which is Kansas City. All of Johnson and Wyandotte counties, particularly the areas within the 435 loop, really need to, they comprise the heart of an urban-oriented congressional district the last several sessions. By doing so, the mutual interests of your constituents in this metropolitan area can have the largest impact in Washington. So much of what happens in Washington affects all of us Kansans, and urban residents really need to have the strongest voice possible. And like innumerable Kansans, I started life growing up on a small farm in western Kansas, and it was well educated, in a small community. But I've lived and worked in the heart of the city for more than 35 years now, and I still have family and friends all across the state. We agree that there are many issues we Kansans today have that affect urban and rural people totally differently. Who we in Kansas City have as a representative to send to Washington needs to represent that difference and be able to address all the issues that this most densely populated area has. I've got 2 additional thoughts that we haven't talked about tonight. One is that we have 4 congressional districts of equal population numbers. As we need 40 equal population legislative districts for senators, it would be very desirable that each of the 4 congressional districts was comprised of exactly 10 state senatorial districts. It always amazed me that that doesn't happen. And then lastly, particularly for smaller population counties, counties should not be split between legislative districts. As an example, my hometown, Hodgman County, with a population of less than 1,000, is currently split between Senate District 33, which has 10 other counties, and Senate District 38, which has 5 other counties. The 2,000 people in Hodgman County deserve to speak with one voice. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Ramon Arguia. Arguia, my fault. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to all for giving us the opportunity to provide input into this very important process. My name is Ramon Murguia. I'm a lifelong resident of Kansas City, Kansas. And I'm here to speak as a private citizen concerned about comments that have been made and other indications about the process that we are undergoing now. And I implore you to listen to the residents and follow your own rules, which admonish you to be fair. Not gerrymander the voting districts. We all have heard the disturbing comments made by Kansas political leadership that give us all concern. We need to understand that the voice of the people is important to this process. Political manipulation of district lines devalues votes, undermines the democratic process. I implore you again to make sure every vote counts, to maintain communities of interest that are important to us in Kansas. We, the citizens of Kansas, will hold you accountable if we see you are not holding up the ideals of our Kansas Constitution and democracy. It's difficult to offer comments when the process kind of superseded the census information that was barely made available today. But in my written remarks, I offer some suggestions in terms of keeping important community of interest, the Kansas City metropolitan area, together in the congressional district. We'll say that the Latino community in Wyandotte and Johnson County has grown, and we do not want our interests diluted by separating that district. I agree with the other people who have commented this evening as to why Wyandotte County and Johnson County have so much in common with regard to our political future. We want to make sure that this process is fairly followed. We will, again, watching as to what happens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next will be Burl New, private citizen. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Burl New. I am the chair of the African American Affairs Commission. I'm also a Democratic precinct committee woman for Ward 12, Precinct 15 in Topeka. And I'm also an appointee to the Kansas Advisory Commission on Juvenile Justice. And I'm also the committee chair for the Disproportionate Minority Contact Committee. And so to the honorable members of the House and the Senate redistricting committees, as an advocate for not only the Kansas citizens of African American descent, but also every one of the nearly 3 million Kansans that you have been elected to represent, I ask that you consider each one of those with voting power, roughly 2 million registered voters, their families, and their valued loved ones as you determine redistricting policies. We know that we cannot legislate compassion, but we can legislate inclusion. Historically, underserved segments of our communities cannot continue to be overlooked. We must remain mindful and accountable for their specific and sometimes unusual needs. We have all been called to serve through appointments and elections, and this call comes with accountable responsibilities. We act in the best interest of all our constituents, not just those who have the voice and the listening ears to address their privileged concerns. There is a higher and even a divine expectation that we do our best to not neglect those who are disenfranchised due to economic status, language communication barriers, and historic injustices. So as you examine redrawing district boundaries, I humbly ask that you remain conscious of fair practices and allow that consciousness to guide your decision-making. Zigzagging around areas that need the most help in order to prioritize areas that pay the most taxes is not equitable. To apply measures that are other-serving and not to consider those who voted for you because they had the hope that you would look out for them even though they may not look or speak like you, may not be parity presented in its best light. Most of us were raised to honor the golden rule and to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And that is a measure that should determine how you as individual representatives serve all of the constituents who reside in your neighborhood, your community, your district, and our state. We must consider each one as we would our own parents, our own family, our own children, and our own loved ones. And even as we consider our campaign contributors, both large and small, and finally, as we would consider those who be the least among us, because what we do today determines where we will all be tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Janet Simpson, private citizen.
Appreciate you coming. Comments tonight. Can you hear me? I am not a political operative, but I do take pride in exercising my civic responsibility. I have voted in every election that I have been eligible to, and I am truly disheartened when I run into people in my community who fail to vote, fail to represent because they feel like their voice doesn't matter. I think this important action that we're taking tonight can show them that they do have a voice in our community. And that is why I'm appearing here tonight, and I applaud everyone who came to support our efforts here. It is my belief that the 3rd District should maintain essentially the boundaries as much as possible within the population constraints, boundaries that it now has, because it is a community of interest. It is a very diverse community, and even though Wyandotte County is a small in area, it is very diverse, and its voice does not need to be diluted by being part of, District 1, for example. So that's the full extent of my comments. I just applaud you in taking the time to hear our concerns, and hope that the redistricting will keep Wyandotte County, Johnson County, 3rd District as intact as it possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next will be Stacy Noel, Kansas African American Affairs Commission.
My name is Stacy Nell, and I'm here this evening wearing my professional hat as the Executive Director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. I pretty much could just ditto everything that my chair said. She so eloquently summed it up. But as such, I would like to address the potential impact of new district lines will have on the voting rights and habits of the African American community in Kansas, specifically in Wyandotte County. I'm here to present the Kansas City metro area as a community of interest. A quick Google search of the phrase KC Metro will produce maps that include Wyandotte and Johnson counties as the Kansas contribution to the overall. We share geographic similarities, cultural and economic ties. There are fluid transitions and close associations across the county line. For example, my mother recently moved to Olathe from Kansas City, Kansas. Much of my family lives in literally, I think my whole family lives in 66112. Just pretty much is it. Similarly, my family has enjoyed shopping at Village Point or taking in a sporting or Monarchs. There's a shared mindset within the two counties, that being that we are a metropolitan community that focuses on a city and suburban lifestyle. In recent decades, Johnson and Wyandotte counties have been included in the congressional 3rd District as a voting bloc because of the shared economic interests. From business investments to infrastructure issues and water management, Wyandotte and Johnson County have more in common than Wyandotte in the southwest corner of Kansas or Johnson in the south. It makes sense geographically, culturally, and economically to keep Wyandotte and Johnson County together, voting bloc in the upcoming redistricting. But the thing I wanted to talk about briefly was the impact of splitting off Wyandotte into the 1st District. In a conversation that I had with my uncle just recently, he said that if Wyandotte County gets taken off into the 1st District, why would we even show up to vote? And I think if we live in a representative democracy, it's important that we encourage everyone to be as involved in the process as to that end. I know that Representative Reichman has announced that 14 additional hearings will be taking place. I cannot stress enough that I was disappointed that all these 14s were crammed into one county, only 75 minutes in length, and that the 2 that took place even I had to have a quick conversation with the Deputy Chief of Staff to make sure that it was okay for me to go to the hearing that took place at 1:30 this afternoon. We need to keep our eye on the vulnerable populations, people who do work during the day, to make sure that they can have their voices heard. Thank you so much for this time today, and I'll be watching how this process unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next will be Connie Brown Collins, Concerned Voters of Wyandotte County. Welcome.
Chair and my name is Connie Brown Collins, or of Wyandotte My community is Kansas City, Kansas. We are an integral part of the greater Kansas City metro area. Thank you for opportunity to provide testimony for the crucial process. I'm requesting that District 3 poll include both Wyandotte and Johnson County. I convened several meetings with the League of Women Voters that comprise both community members of Wyandotte and Johnson counties, and several local and organizations from those counties. Proud Wyandotte County residents, we view our diversity as the most important community asset. Our county is one of 2 in the nation that has no majority ethnic group. In comparison, Wyandotte and Johnson are by far the most densely populated in the state. The counties are contiguous, compact, geographically similar, and share many commonalities. Though I live in Wyandotte County, I constantly travel for daily activities across the 2-county area. Grocery shopping and main shopping at super retailers, both in Wyandotte and Johnson. Bank and pharmacies are in Johnson and main health care facilities and appointments, both in Wyandotte and Johnson. My family has utilized hospitals, rehab centers, etc. in both Johnson and Wyandotte. I travel the I-70, 635, 35, 435 corridor several times a week. Appointments, errands, and other activities. I actually attend church in Kansas City, Missouri, the Tri-County area. So that's just the way it is here. So as a member of the Wellborn KCK community, I share with my neighbors many aspects, my Johnson County neighbors, a desire for clean, well-maintained neighborhoods. Our population density is the largest in the state of Kansas. Share 3 of the 5 largest cities in the state, Overland Park, Kansas City, and Olathe. We also share healthcare systems, KU Med, other healthcare systems across the county. We share transportation systems, and we all know concerns about traffic, traveling those transportation systems. Employment mobility is shared across the county lines, as you know, by major employers such as the medical centers, Amazon, the community colleges and school districts. Environmental issues, we share air quality due to congested traffic. Education centers we share. And finally, I would say that would like to keep Wyandotte and Johnson in the 3rd Congressional District due to their shared communities of interest, their urban and regional overlap. Thank you for your time and attention.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Our next presenter will be Christina Ostmeyer, Kansas Appleseed. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Christina Osmeyer, and I'm a resident of Kansas City, Kansas, as well as the Communications Director for Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy organization. I know you've heard from my colleagues this week. And I also know that you've heard from dozens of Kansans from across the state. From my hometown of Colby to Chanute to here in KCK, much of their testimony has reiterated a lot of the same messages. Make the Kansas redistricting process equitable, make the process transparent, and make sure Kansans are accurately represented in their districts. These town halls are a start toward achieving these ideals, but that is all they are. More must be done. While the census data just became available today, it is no secret that interests are intending to draw the maps in such a way that Wyandotte County would fall within the 1st district. Growing up in Colby, there's a lot to be proud of. Our agriculture, our work ethic, our closeness, not like physical closeness. Things are very spread apart there. But the first district also has a multitude of unique attributes. But there are some that are deeply troubling in the history that we have there and that shape the communities there as well. Many of the towns I grew up around, going to swim meets, debate tournaments, family reunions, were sundown towns that enforced segregation through racist laws, intimidation, and violence, some even until the late 1960s. And while Western Kansas is more diverse and continues to become so, the impacts of that racist history shaped and continue to influence the communities today. Black, brown, indigenous, and non-white communities are consistently and systematically erased. Their votes are suppressed, and the history of using congressional maps as another way to discriminate, dilute the voices of non-white people is long and storied. Do not let this legacy continue. I love my roots in Western Kansas. I talk about it all the time, but there's work to be done. There's a lot of work there to be done there to confront the systematic inequities. I love my home now in Wyandotte County, and moving to Wyandotte County, I see many of the same values I grew up around here as well. Unity, tenacity, energy. While issues in housing, infrastructure, representation, and beyond affect all parts of Kansas, how they affect Wyandotte County is unique compared to the rural needs of the first district where I grew up. I know that this committee can ensure the representation of both the first and third districts remains fair. In addition to protecting our maps in Kansas, I ask that the public engagement process becomes broader, more intentional, and more accessible. We hope to see additional forums, which have been announced, but also more materials in different languages, including Spanish and beyond. Thank you for your time and consideration today. I know that we are happy to provide any information that you need, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Our next presenter will be Clarence Brown, UAW. Welcome.
To the chair and to be honest with you, I don't really know as much as I should about this. I got involved because, well, let me say what I'm supposed to say. It's Clarence Brown, president of UAW Local 31, Kansas City, Kansas County. But because I work there and because I'm in that area, I become close with the community. The only thing I can say is that I just hope and pray that you guys don't do what everybody say you're going to do. But so because of the voting, because the votes to go this way or the votes to go that way, I hope you do it the right way so that the people in the community stick together. This is downhearting for the people who don't understand. I'm one of those people. But I'm going to understand the next time better than I do this time. I came here because I just wanted to say, don't make these people start over again. They stick together. Solidarity man, as you know, I'm union. Okay? But solidarity means sticking together. These people don't want to go nowhere. They want to stay together in Wyandotte County and Johnson County. They're working together. Those are the things that help these communities and people who live in them. And a lot of those people, they don't understand. They rely on you guys to help them. Please help them. Don't do it. And let me tell you, you know they're saying it. Oh, they're going to do this. They're going to do that. Don't do that. Help these people stick together. Give them the hope they deserve. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Our next presenter will be Lauren Fracher, private citizen. Did I get that last name right? Probably not. I can tell. I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. It's Proctor. It's very German.
All right.
Thank you. My name's Lauren Proctor. I'm from Overland Park, Kansas. I work full-time, which is why I appreciate you guys coming out. Kansans deserve to elect leaders who best represent their interest. Major changes in the current makeup of the Kansas congressional districts will disproportionately impact minority communities that are already struggling for representation. As a board member of the Kansas Abortion Fund, it is not lost on me that we have an important election coming in 2022. Besides the constitutional amendment being added to the primary election, not the general election, it is clear the majority party is working towards silencing the voice of voters in varying ways. Gerrymandering makes districts artificially conservative with the intent to make our state one of the most extreme and restrictive on abortion rights. I would have preferred a nonpartisan entity to prepare the redistricting plans for approval by the Kansas legislature. This would give voters an unbiased process. I want this committee to prepare redistricting plans only using data provided under the federal law by the Census Bureau. I want any redistricting plans to be presented at statewide public hearings before the consideration by the House and Senate. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next is Susan Dunray Wolf.
Sound okay? Can you hear me all? Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and other distinguished guests, my name is Susan Dumais Wolf, and I'm a proud graduate of Valley High School, also the University of Kansas, and I currently reside in Prairie Village. And I'll get to the point. I appreciate this opportunity to address your duties and responsibilities surrounding districting. And I'll get to the point. So first, please respect and adopt the guidelines and criteria used by this committee in 2012. They reflect core Kansas values and beliefs central to protecting our rights to fair representation. And central to these long-held values is the idea of community. Johnson County and Wyandotte County, as part of the Kansas City metropolitan area, we share day-to-day interests, both social and economic, and I'm talking beyond just the fact that we both produce the best barbecue in the world. For example, under social interests, healthcare. KU Medical Center, located in Wyandotte County, serves as the premier provider of healthcare to both counties, but also to the region. And they, being subject to federal, state, regulatory, and laws, they both hold these interests together, governing healthcare, other social interests. Our economic interests that we share, roads, highways, bridges, additional infrastructure issues, and shared resources, water, air quality, power grid, other environmental issues, I think somebody else addressed earlier. On a final point, please provide the opportunity for additional town halls so that the committee may appropriately hear from citizens with full information about the census data that was just released today, and so that we can provide input relevant to the criteria that you ultimately adopt. It's difficult for us to come here and provide fulsome testimony when we do not know exactly how you intend to evaluate that data. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next presenter will be Mark Simay, private citizen. Sir, welcome, and I hope we got your last name correct.
I appreciate speaking in the details. 70 senior, Grew up in Palm Beach County, Florida, and moved to Wyandotte County. And diversity is such an important thing, something to ignore. Palm Beach County, I know we quite a bit of diversity, and it was a good thing. So redistricting, gerrymandering formula does not allow different points of view, voices. Things that are important, infrastructure bills that eventually become law, social services, education, business, medical delivery systems, and of course, mental health, our mental health counselor. That's basically all I'm going to say. I didn't have a heck of a lot of preparation for this, but I think the most important thing is to be fair and honest and not partisan. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Our next presenter is Jacquez Barber, private citizen. Welcome.
Thank you. Opportunity to speak. Jacques Barber, a voting citizen of Wyandotte. I'm happy to see a number of people that are out tonight because I think this shows that interest in their government. Fortunately, we still have a large number of people who do not. I've had fortunate experience of talking with people who say they don't because they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. When it comes to gerrymandering, it's very unfortunate that it's been practice of our democratic process since 1812. It's probably the most undemocratic process of our democracy. In fact, it's my opinion that it is one form of tyranny because it does not fairly represent the will. It is to benefit political favor or maintain power. My feeling is that until we have truly independent, objective body draws the district lines for voters, we'll be plagued with this whole issue of political partisanship. I hope that this hearing, these public hearings that are being will be given consideration. If they're not, it only serves to diminish the democratic process. Our democracy has endured for 200 years, but it has constantly plagued with deficiencies because of people. It still depends on people. Until we can get to the point where we fairly elect people who are truly concerned about welfare and interest of the people of the state of Kansas, continue to have.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Pamela Houston, private citizen.
for this opportunity. My name is Pamela Houston. I am a Washington High School graduate, class of 92, Johnson County Community College, 1994, and Washburn University, 1996. So I've kind of been all over the state. But I'm here to implore you to consider the impact as you're making a decision. Please consider social justice. Please consider environmental justice. Please consider systemic racism. And please consider the evolution of the state of Kansas. Again, thank you for this opportunity. And for those of the decision makers that are people of faith, please lean not to your own understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we do have a couple more minutes. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to presentation or make a comment that hasn't signed up, please come forward. Just state your name.
Good evening. My name is Bellman and I'm a private citizen tonight. I wanted to come to you with a unique perspective. It's a reason why I didn't sign up originally. Hearing all of these voices, all of these very important voices, I wanted to add mine to this. I am a recent college graduate. I have a master's at K-State recently, and I'm a first-year educator in the background and the experience that I want to add to perspective from a young. While I was an undergraduate at K-State, I became very involved in nonpartisan voter turnout, trying to encourage my fellow students to get out and vote regardless of who they vote. And countless times, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students said that they were not motivated to vote because they didn't think that their vote counted. It didn't matter. Regardless of if they voted or whether they didn't vote, the same person was going to win anyways. That comes down ultimately to the district that you're in. Who is your representative? And those students, those college students, regardless of whether they voted in Manhattan or whether they voted in their hometown, they didn't think that their voice mattered in the first place. That also relates to my experience as a first-year educator, who I have as my students in the who I have in my classroom right now will be voting in just a few short years. And ultimately, that relates to the work that you're doing today and tomorrow, the final decision that comes down the road. Because regardless of the decision that you make, it will affect my students. Though they might not be eligible to vote right now, they will be voting in 5, 10, hopefully more than that years. I, as an educator, am trying to get them to become engaged citizens and encourage them to vote and be involved in their community. And if they don't think that their voice matters right now, why would it matter in 10 or 15 years down? So as a private citizen, I would encourage you to keep your current voters in mind right now, but also keep my students in mind, because they're in my mind every single day for the entire school year and beyond. That concludes my comments. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more. Is there anybody else? Oh, you have a comment. You're going to make a comment? Well, okay, ma'am, go ahead.
This is the first, sorry to say, but I just want to say, nothing I had prepared or anything, that I don't know what religion everybody is, but God made us all. And we all have to care about one another, because what we do, what we say, how we act to others, down the road when it comes time to pay the bill, I even go a sheep or a goat. Sheep go to heaven, goats go to heaven. So be careful of how you do what you are here to do.
One second, sir. Ma'am? Oh, sorry. I'll come back and get your name afterwards, ma'am. Lillian Gilbert. Okay, thank you very much. Sir, this is for public comment, so if you want to go ahead and make a comment to everybody, please do. Thank you. And state your name.
My name is Michael Williams. I'm with the local NAACP. And I just wanted to ask the legislature a question. How many of you have lately or ever came into Quinera, walked up and down the street or drove up and down the street and spoke to anybody? So the Quindera area in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, what you would consider the ghetto or the hood or whatever may have you. So if you're not familiar with my area, because I live there, you know, I went to the military, I see you in the Army, I was in the Army myself. How can you make a decision based off of what you don't know? So you should ask those people in that community. Thank you.
Okay, sir, thank you. Last one, please come forward. State your name.
Thank you very much. My name is Matt Kleinman. I'm a Johnson County born, Blue Valley West and KU grad, and now Wyandotte County resident. I appreciate the gentleman's comments. I know tonight there's an ARPA federal funding meeting that many participants in our community were unable to attend because of the schedule of this meeting tonight. I know that there's a Northeast Grocery Co-op meeting on Quintero Boulevard that many residents that participate in that group were not able to make it tonight. So I would encourage you to come back, get to know the community. Many people who want to provide public comments are not able to be here this evening. And so I'll just say that I submitted a written testimony to you all. Hopefully it makes the record, but I wanted to share that there's some Supreme Court precedent for what we're doing tonight. There is no more basic right in our democracy than the right to participate in electing our political leaders. That's John Roberts. And that the freedom of speech by citizens is a matter of public concern. Voting is our ultimate right. And that it's a heart of our First Amendment protection. Our political speech is a First Amendment protection. By drawing districts based on the political views of this community to win an election might be abridging their First Amendment rights. That will invite strict scrutiny from our Kansas State Supreme Court. I want you to recognize that not only does this community want to be together, but it is our First Amendment right to vote. And just because we voted for somebody in this district that you may not agree with, does not mean you can abridge our rights as citizens to vote for who we want to represent us. So to save the taxpayers of Kansas money from expensive lawsuits, which will be filed if you violate our First Amendment rights, I encourage you, as the gentleman from the UAW said earlier, do the right thing. Please do the right thing. We care about our community. Care. We're here. During a global pandemic, we are here tonight to sit with you, and invite you to see how much we care. Don't let that go. Don't abridge our First Amendment rights. As Kansans, as Wyandotte County residents, as Johnson County residents, care about our community and abridge our rights. Better believe you will hear us again. Thank you.
All right, sir, thank you. Seems like a good way to end. Hey, I want to thank you all for your input today. This was great. The specifics you guys provided was just, it was really good, and we really do appreciate it. It is our goal to achieve exceptional transparency and public access. That's our goal. We're working towards that. We appreciate your help in trying to make those things happen. This was our 12th stop in a 14-stop listening tour. We have left Leavenworth and Lansing. However, one thing I didn't make, Leavenworth and Lawrence, thank you. Lansing's where I'm staying tonight. What I didn't do at the beginning, and I need to do that, we are physically, though, tonight in the district of Representative Valdenia Wynn and Senator David Haley, who's right back over here to our left. Okay. In addition, so if you haven't seen him, make sure you see him on the way out. Also, trying to get more work to do. We had 21 folks that did submit testimony. Sir, you said something about submitting, and I would say we have a list if you want to check. And we encourage others. I know Representative Tom Sawyer submitted testimony as well, and others. So again, we thank you. I'm tired. All messed up. Whew. But long day. All right, this tour is not, but what we want to highlight, you guys hit it. I've said before, this tour is not the only tour. This is not the only stop. It's not the last thing we're going to do. It's not the only time for input. We want to strongly encourage you, even if it's not at 2 a.m., if you're not up, to go ahead and put stuff into the system and let us know what's going on. We have a lot of work to do to plan what's going to happen between now and the beginning of session. We still have those things that we're trying to get through and make sure we have that right. We're going to get there, but in the session as well, we're going to have hearings, we're going to have testimony. There's a lot of things that happen before this ever gets to the final step. And I just wanted you to know this is not the last thing. And again, we want to hear from you about your communities. One thing I want to add, we had the send your comments to redistricting at klrd.ks.gov. That's number one, or at ksledgeresearch.org, number two. Number three is we have a mailing address that we didn't put out. It was on the slides earlier, but it's KLRD 300 Southwest 10th Street, room 68 West, Topeka, Kansas, 66612. All right, with that, I want to thank Kansas City, Kansas Community College again for this great facility. The microphones worked all right. Yay, we finally got it. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's been a trying time. Thank you to the audience for all the great input again, and the committee members for your patience in going through this process. We really thank you for that. Our next stop is in Leavenworth, and it begins tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Thank you, and we are adjourned.